In mid-September, I made a video going over my predictions for the FNaF movie, but what I think is really crazy is the fact that the FNaF movie has now been out for over half a year. What I thought it would be fun to do is return to that prediction video that I made and go over what I got right and what I got wrong and just overall see how well I predicted the FNaF movie. I made a video similar to this one about a month after Help Wanted 2 came out, going over how well I predicted that game, and it was pretty fun to do. I actually planned to do a video like this back when Security Breach came out, and I think I still have the doc, but I just never ended up making the video. I think it's a pretty fun idea though, so that's why I'm doing it for the FNaF movie. And so, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started. The first idea that I talked about in that prediction video was the idea that the movie would take a lot of ideas from the Silver Eyes. Here's what I said. Looking at the trailers for the FNaF movie, it seems pretty clear to me that there are a bunch of similarities between the movie and the Silver Eyes, but it's also different enough to make it distinct. Still, I think that it makes sense to look at the details connecting the two and see if we can use the Silver Eyes to kind of predict other parts of the movie, so long as they make sense within the context of the movie, of course. In the newest trailer for the movie, there's a scene where we see Abby in the arcade hiding behind an arcade machine, and in the background we see Foxy clearly searching for her. The first scene of the book has Charlie hiding in the arcade behind an arcade machine, and Foxy is searching for her. The scene in the movie is pulled straight from the book, and I think that's definitely intentional to try to make us connect the two with each other. I think I was actually right about this idea. The movie does take quite a few ideas from the Silver Eyes, and that Foxy arcade section definitely is pulled from that book. What I honestly expected to see was Foxy punching the arcades like he did in the Silver Eyes, but that didn't happen. I was actually sitting in the theater for the first time watching the movie, and I saw that Foxy arcade scene and started whispering to myself, punch them, punch them, punch them, over and over again, but he didn't. I also didn't mention it in that video, but I do think that the ball pit might have been a reference to Into the Pit, since ball pits are so heavily memed and associated with Into the Pit nowadays, but I don't think it's anything beyond a reference. There are more things in the movie though that are taken from the Silver Eyes, and I was actually right about some of them, most specifically William Afton. Here's what I said. In the movie, we find him with a new job separate from Freddy's, but also still connected to Freddy's, pretending to be a good guy and helping the main character with discovering the mysteries and stuff from Freddy's, but Afton here is actually using a fake name. Now, if you think about everything I just said, it actually perfectly aligns with Afton in the Silver Eyes. Obviously things are different, that's a given, but they're very similar scenarios. Both of them have Afton pretending to be good and using their job disconnected from and yet still connected to Freddy's to help the main character get into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza while also using a fake name. In the case of the Silver Eyes, he's a security guard for the mall built over Freddy's and helps Charlie and the gang get inside, and he uses the name Dave Miller. In the case of the movie, he's a career counselor and helps Mike get the job at Freddy's using the fake name Steve Raglan. And I also don't think it's coincidental that later on in both storylines, Afton pops up in Freddy's wearing his Spring Bonnie costume. And while he's there, he also attacks a police officer. In the Silver Eyes, it's Officer Dunn, while in the movie, it's Vanessa. So something happens to one of the main characters, which also happens in the Silver Eyes to Carlton. It's possible that Mike will have to return to Freddy's because of Abby being taken. I think this part was actually pretty much entirely correct. It was less of a prediction anyway because it was mostly just based on stuff that appeared in the trailers, but I think I was definitely right that this stuff was inspired by the Silver Eyes. Afton did stab Vanessa like he stabbed Dunn, and all the other stuff is similar to the Silver Eyes too. Later on I began talking about the idea of Afton getting springlocked since that happens in the Silver Eyes. As we've already discussed, Afton shows up in his Spring Bonnie springlock suit, but at the end of the book, Afton gets springlocked. The Spring Bonnie suit in the movie is tattered and missing an ear, just like Spring Bonnie in the final minigame of FNaF 3. So is it possible that we'll actually get to see Afton get springlocked in this movie? And yeah, that did happen. Afton got springlocked, but beyond just that, Afton's springlocked body was dragged away by the animatronics, and the exact same thing happens in the Silver Eyes. The shot in the movie is also just very similar to the one in the Silver Eyes graphic novel in that scene. The pizzeria also ends up crumbling when this happens, and while Freddy's doesn't crumble in the Silver Eyes, it does crumble in the aftermath with Afton still inside. Abby at the end of the movie also asks if they can go back and visit the animatronics, which does seem like a dumb idea, but in the Silver Eyes, Clay Burke actually takes all the animatronics out of Freddy's before it was demolished because he knows what they are, and he stores them in his basement. I didn't really think that would end up happening in the movies, but it technically could. Either way though, I do think that's an intentional connection. Next I started talking about Golden Freddy's appearance in the movie. This is what I said. Another similarity between the two is the fact that Abby ended up getting taken away like Carlton did. However, there is of course a difference that Abby was taken by Golden Freddy, not Afton. But the fact that she was taken away by Golden Freddy and seems to think of him fondly indicates that she seems to have a connection with him. Who else do we know who has a connection with Golden Freddy? Carlton in the Silver Eyes. Maybe later on in the movie it'll be revealed that Golden Freddy Freddy is her brother Garrett, but that would have to rely on there being two spirits in Golden Freddy, which I personally believe, but we don't know for sure. I also don't know if they would reveal that in the movie, but if it is to be true, maybe they would. I wasn't quite as correct with this part. Garrett in this movie isn't Golden Freddy, so Abby having a connection with Golden Freddy because he's her brother wasn't correct. However, I think I probably was right that the whole connection with Golden Freddy thing tying in with Carlton and the Silver Eyes was right. Again, these were just connections between the Silver Eyes and the movie, so it probably wasn't wrong. Unless the numerous connections were unintentional, which I very much doubt considering the thing with Afton being dragged away. That connection is just so clear to me that I don't really think it's deniable. Here's what I said next. When Jason returns to Freddy's, the animatronics often focus on him, and the gang thinks that they're trying to hurt him, but in reality, they were trying to protect him because he's just a little kid just like them. In the movie, the animatronics are focused on Abby because she is a kid just like them, and Vanessa says they want to make her like them. But what if she's wrong? What if, like in the Silver Eyes, they're just trying to protect Abby? This part I actually was wrong about. Instead of the animatronics trying to protect Abby, they actually are trying to kill her. But they also don't really know that they're doing so. The kids are being manipulated by Afton in the same way they were in the fourth closet to try and make other kids like them. The animatronics in the movie aren't the way they are in the Silver Eyes, they're the way they are in the fourth closet. At the end of the fourth closet, Carlton actually makes a drawing that shows Afton is the one that killed them, and in the movie, Abby does the same thing. And in both cases, they turn on Afton and get them killed. Not to mention, in both cases, it's a character who is connected with Golden Freddy that is the one that teaches the kids that Afton killed them. So I was wrong about this, but I wasn't entirely wrong about the animatronics being based on how they are in the books. I was just wrong about which book. Now one of the bigger debates of the movie is whether or not Mike was an Afton. Now that the movie's been out for a long time, I think most people agree that he isn't, but I do think he still might be. This is what I said on the matter back in my prediction video. There's also a debate about the movie regarding whether or not Mike is an Afton. Mike Schmidt in the game's timeline is almost definitely Michael Afton, but the movie shows him having a mom and dad separate from the Aftons and doesn't seem to know who William Afton is. However, I think that Mike will end up being an Afton. To me, it would make sense if Mike had grown up without his real dad and maybe mom, making his parents in the movie his adopted parents. Or it's possible that Afton and Mike's mom divorced and she remarried, making Mike's dad actually his stepdad. Mike's family does line up well with the Afton family, considering he has a seemingly dead younger brother who he apparently feels guilty about, as well as a younger sister whose name is not only an anagram for baby, but also is an obscure nickname for Elizabeth. Obviously, Abby is more commonly a nickname for Abigail, but it can be one for Elizabeth. So the family matches up, the storyline would make sense, and there's also Mike's aunt. Mary Stuart Masterson was originally set to be playing an unnamed villain, but more recently she was revealed to be Mike's weird Aunt Jane. Would make sense for her to be a villain if her brother was William Afton, though that's just speculative and not confirmed. But all of this does line up really well. It could serve as a really cool twist, revealing near the end of the movie that Afton is Mike's real dad, but Mike possibly having to make the choice to go against his own father. I think it would be really cool. This was pretty much entirely wrong. While Mike being an Afton is still possible, especially since Afton went all the way to Nebraska to kill Garrett, specifically indicating that he has something against him or his family, Mike being an Afton is not revealed to him or us in the movie, so the idea of Mike having to decide to go against his father just didn't happen. I do think Mike's family is definitely meant to represent the Afton family, and I think if William is Mike's dad, I do think it makes sense that he had him with Mike's mom and then they split up, and that Mike's dad is actually his stepdad, but it's never revealed that Mike is an Afton whether he actually was or not. I was wrong in guessing that it would be a twist revealed in this movie. I was also wrong about Aunt Jane being an actual villain. I honestly don't know what I expected from her, but she was less of a villain and more of an asshole antagonist. I ended up including a run-through of how I thought the movie would go in the prediction video, but I actually excluded Aunt Jane from the whole thing just because I honestly had zero ideas about her. She ended up just being Mike's aunt trying to get custody of Abby, and she ended up being the one to hire the criminals who broke into Freddy's. Speaking of that narrative prediction for the movie, let's go through that and talk about what I got right and what I got wrong. With a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He's just doing the regular things he does during his shift, but the animatronics end up attacking him and stuffing a Freddy Fazbear mask onto his face, killing him as the title card appears. This prediction of the opening of the movie was actually pretty accurate. It was slightly different as the movie begins with the guard instantly trying to survive the animatronics, but I was right that that scene would be the opening of the movie and that he'd get stuffed into a Freddy mask. I was also right that right after getting stuffed it would transition into the title card, but there's also the whole 8-bit missing children incident depiction between those, which is really cool. That was something I didn't expect, but I'm glad we got, especially since that intro music is so fire. After that I start discussing Mike and Abby and how Mike takes care of Abby. Abby also has a babysitter named Max. Mike currently works as a security guard at a mall, and he uses the money to take care of Abby, though it's not much. One night, Max, along with two guys named Hank and Carl and one other guy whose name is unknown, break into the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, wrecking the place. But while they're there, all of them get attacked by the animatronics, and Max even sees what she believes to be a child luring her to Freddy Fazbear. She tries to look inside Freddy's mouth before a human hand reaches out. All four of these characters end up dead, or publicly missing. This wasn't exactly accurate. I expected them to break in before Mike even started working at Freddy's, but that's not the case. Instead, Aunt Jane hired them to sabotage Mike's job, which happened after his second night. I also didn't expect anything about pills and Mike using them to help him sleep and go through memories of his brother getting kidnapped, and I also didn't really expect Garrett to have been killed by Afton. I honestly thought that it would just be a series of flashbacks throughout the movie that kind of motivated Mike to keep going back in order to make money to take care of Abby. Another thing I expected was for Mike to be offered the Freddy security job while he still worked at the mall, though in hindsight I don't really know why I thought that. However, I was correct in thinking that Mike would first meet with Afton, reject the Freddy's offer, and then call Afton when things got too tough. I was just wrong about the circumstances. Another thing I was right about was Mike only bringing Abby to Freddy's because Max had died and was no longer available to look after Abby, but I was wrong in guessing that that would happen on night 1. Instead, it happened on night 3. I expected Vanessa to show up on night 3, but she instead shows up on night 2 before Abby was brought to Freddy's. I was honestly wrong about quite a lot. I expected Afton to show up on night 4 and hurt Vanessa then, leaving Mike to fend for himself on night 5 and only go back to save Abby. Going back to save Abby was correct, but I thought Abby would have been taken away from Freddy's rather than from her home, and Afton only appeared on night 5. I expected the animatronics to move around and be kind of aggressive the whole movie, but instead they did nothing on the first 2 nights, excluding when the criminals broke in, and for nights 3 and 4 they were friendly, also only getting aggressive on night 5. I was wrong about Afton revealing he's Mike's father, I didn't expect Vanessa to be his daughter, and I was right about him getting spring-locked. I was wrong about people finding his body setting up for a FNaF 3 movie, but they did set up a FNaF 2 movie, so I wasn't entirely wrong about the setup for a sequel. So I guess that answers the question. How well did I predict the FNaF movie? Not very well. But what about you guys? Did you guys predict the story of the FNaF movie well? I didn't, so I feel like contrary to what some people said, they didn't really show too much in the trailers. There were some things I feel like they could have excluded from the trailers to make people more excited in the theater, like Corey X Kenshin and Spring Bonnie, but I don't really think they revealed too much of the story. But that's just me. But if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys!